Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and today I want to talk about tractor rollovers, why they happen, and how we can prevent them. I also want to tell you an interesting story about the fact that I personally know two people locally here who've been hit by a train while driving their tractor. Seems crazy, but it's a real story. So it's impossible to make a video like this one without sounding like you think you're an expert. I'm no expert. I probably don't know any more than you about this topic, but I've done some research, I've put a bunch of hours on a tractor, and I've had some instances where I almost rolled a tractor in situations you wouldn't expect to roll a tractor. And yesterday, I saw another picture of someone who had just rolled their tractor and thought about how scary it is, how dangerous. I mean, a lot of people die every year flipping their tractors over. And even if you're not hurt, you've probably damaged an expensive machine, and anything we can do to prevent that is for the best. So I parked on this side of this hill to kind of try to illustrate a couple of things. The first thing that everyone is going to go to, and if you only want to watch the first 2 minutes of this, the best summary is keep your bucket low to the ground and have a lot of ballast. But there's really a lot more to think about than that. So if you picture your tractor as a cube, say, no matter what you're doing or where you're at or how it's set up, somewhere in that cube is a center of gravity. And if you lift your bucket up into the air with weight in it, especially, but anytime you just lift your bucket up, that center of gravity inside that cube moves up and forward. And if you think about your points of stability being your wheels, if your center of gravity ever leaves your wheels, leaves that cube, your tractor tips over. That's just how it works. So right now I'm on a hill. So I was coming across flat ground and I drove onto this hill. My center of gravity is kind of in the same place in the tractor, but now the tractor's leaning, and by the tractor leaning, my center of gravity is now out above my wheels, and if it leans too much, that's when you fall. Before I ever bought my tractor, I watched a ton of videos about ballast, and I started off by heavily loading ballast onto my tractor as a safety measure. But then I actually started off with one set of wheel weights and filled tires, and I always keep a rear implement on. Then I added this tractor cab. It weighs 400 pounds and some of that weight is up high. So I made my tractor less safe by putting that cab on because my center of gravity moved up. So now it takes less lean for my center of gravity to be past the tires and flip me over. So as soon as I put that cab on, I went and got the other sets of wheel weights, and I started looking at even more ways to add weight down low on the tractor. When I recorded this section of the video talking about ballast, I forgot something that's really important, and that is the width of your wheels and tires. So on the rear of the tractor, I would say almost everyone should get wheel spacers because having that extra width makes a huge difference. On the front, if you have a pivoting axle like mine, you don't really gain much stability from widening it because that extra width doesn't lock in until your pivot point of the axle comes up and hits the frame. So primarily, towards the end, we're going to talk a little bit about flipping backward, but primarily we're talking about tipping sideways. And the interesting thing to me is the two scariest moments I've had on the tractor where I thought it was going to flip over. I was not on a hill, and I wasn't carrying extreme amounts of weight up high. So in one instance, I was carrying a bunch of firewood rounds, like 20-inch rounds, and I was going fast, and I had those in the grapple, and one of them fell out of the grapple and landed right in front of my tire, and of course I'm going too fast to change or anything. I ran over that firewood round with both wheels on that side and I really thought the tractor was gonna flip, and there was nothing I could do about it if it had happened. So when you're carrying something in front of you like that, you need to make sure that it doesn't have the chance to fall out, and if it does have the chance to fall out, you wanna be going slow. Because as we think about that center of gravity in the cube, if you're going fast and that shifts towards the danger zone and has momentum, it makes it that momentum of your speed makes you more likely to flip. The second most dangerous thing I was driving across a field that I wasn't familiar with. And I didn't know what was in that field, and there was a huge rock. And it was the same thing, you know, on the 49 acre brush hogging job, I had 2 of these. One was a big rock I didn't know was there. The other was a big hole that I didn't know I was there. So driving fast across unknown terrain, if one wheel drops in a hole, you might as well be setting on the side of a steep hill, and it drops quickly, so you have momentum to flip that tractor over. So that's a good way to have a scary moment sneak up on you. So then, the advice there from me is if you're in an unknown territory, you need to go slow and make sure that your weight is low to the ground. The next thing is when you know you're on a slope. Like I worked this slope in a recent video, grading this out around the building, and I did as much as I could driving back and forth this way because you're much less likely to tip forward, almost impossible to actually flip the tractor forward, and we'll get to flipping backward in a minute, but it was a lot safer to go this way. So I did as much as I could this way, and when I went the other way, I went really slow with the bucket low and all my weight I could put on the back, and as soon as it started, you feel that danger moment where you stiffen up and you realize I'm, almost at my center of gravity tipping. When you feel that, you want to turn down the hill at a 45 and get yourself driving down the hill, because that center of gravity has a lot further to travel to get outside of your wheels forward than sideways. So that's a tip for working on a hillside. I've already mentioned ballast. I have filled rear tires, 3 sets of wheel weights, and if I've got my box blade on, I hang suitcase weights on that box blade because I want to have every bit of ballast I can get for the type of work and the type of lifting I do. I've already mentioned this too, but always travel with your bucket low anytime that you can. If you've got to move with that bucket up in the air, you want to be on flat ground and going slowly. The next thing I want to say is about flipping a tractor over backward. That still happens statistically. That's a way that people get seriously hurt or die from operating a tractor, is flipping backward. I think these hydrostats are much less likely to do that. The weight is balanced differently on them. My John Deere Model A, you can feel it just putting around, not doing anything serious, that you could roll that thing backward because those rear tires are so huge. But on any tractor, it still makes sense that you never want to tie anything you're pulling, you never want it hooked higher than your rear axle. If you think of your rear axle like a pivot point, if you pull above that pivot point, just picture like you've got something standing up like this. If you pull on the bottom of it, it slides. If you pull on the top of it, it falls on you. Same thing with the tractor. So you never want to hook, if you're pulling a log, you don't want to hook that, say you've got your box blade up in the air and you hook up on the top of it and that's a foot higher than your rear axle. It seems good because you can lift the log up a little bit with a short chain, but you're risking the possibility of losing your center of gravity backward. You want to hook that to the drawbar. Now my story about train tracks. It seems crazy, right? Who gets hit by a train? But 2 guys that I know who are real farmers, farm their whole lives, have to take heavy equipment down the road, those types of things. have got hit by a train. And the reason is, a lot of times there's not good visibility on each direction here. And we've got train tracks that cross diagonal across a square corner. So if you picture you're driving down the road, you drive across the train tracks. As you get to it, you look in each direction. Then 50 feet past that, you come to a stop sign, you turn right, and 50 more feet, you're crossing the same train tracks that you just crossed. And I'm gonna say in their minds, they say, well, I just looked at this. But you think about a tractor going 10 miles an hour, that 50 feet, stop, 50 feet, stop, it's a couple minutes. Tractor's louder than the horn, and I'm putting some pictures on the screen, but pretty devastating. And it's a miracle that both of these people were uninjured, or not seriously injured. You know, they were beat up from it, but they're still with us. But as they came to that second junction, there was no visibility this way without coming to a complete stop, and I think they were in a comfort zone because they'd already looked that way when they crossed it the first time. So, just a crazy story, crazy the devastation of the tractor, and crazy that they survived it. I hope that this video was helpful. If there are things that I forgot to mention, put them in the comments. If you have some pictures of tractor rollovers or anything like that you want to share, go to the Rock Hill Farms Facebook page, and that's a great place for us to interact and have a conversation. So I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links over here to more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.